concept of human rights. I want to move on tonight to talk about how the Quran expects us to behave within the family itself. Because in our own countries where we came from, there were different institutions which helped nurture the younger generation, the youth, whether it was the school, the environment, the madrasa, which supported the proper upbringing of the youth. But here the family plays a much more vital and important role in the well-being, not only of the youth, but of the Muslim community itself. And I believe that if we go back to the Quran, we find that the Quran identifies and stresses key core values depending on who we are relating to within the family. The Quran emphasizes certain core values. For example, when you deal with the seniors, or when you deal with your parents, with your children, with your siblings, and so on. So this is going to be a kind of a journey into the Quran to see the core values, identify the core values that the Quran expects us to have in order to interact with members of the family. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. To start with, in the West at least, the family is seen as a man and a wife, a couple of children, maybe a dog or a cat. But of course, in the Islamic tradition, it is far more different than that. The emphasis in the Quran is definitely on the family. In fact, when you look at the Quran itself, it gives different names to the family. Sometimes it uses the term al Muhammad, for example, not al. And that may mean the household or the followers. Whereas sometimes, of course, it uses ahlul bayt. It means the members of the family itself. Sometimes it uses the term ashira. Ashira refers to kinsfolk or those who are nearest in relations. And sometimes it uses qurba, dhil qurba, as we have heard so many times. Those who are related by the female side. So different names are given in the Quran to different groupings within the family. The family was far more broad in the olden days and is referred to in the Quran than we conceive it of. Interestingly, when you look at the Quran itself, you find that the Quran emphasizes the family so much that if there is somebody who is poor within the family, you will feed or give it to the one within your family first, then you'll give it to somebody outside. And therefore the term family comes before the faqir. In Allah yamurkum bil-adli wal-ihsan wa ita'i dhil qurba, that Allah commands you to do good and to keep away from evil, and then you will give it to the dhil qurba wal masakin. Then comes the miskin, and then comes the yatim, and so on. In other words, the family overrides, trumps over those who are outside the family when it comes to giving and helping those within the family. To put it differently, we need a healthy family for healthy children and healthy society. In order to create a good society, the Quran emphasizes a good family. There is a very beautiful verse in the Quran on this aspect at least, which is in chapter 25, verse 74. Alladhina, amongst those يقولون, amongst those are those who say ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Amongst those who are believers, good believers are those who say, "O our Lord, give us within our spouses, or give us spouses and children who are a source of comfort and a delight to our eyes." Give us those spouses and children who are a source of comfort and delight to our eyes. And the verse doesn't stop there. وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. And make us the imams of those who are God conscious. Not only make us amongst those who are God conscious, but we should be role models because of the support from the family, the spouse, and the children, that we become a role model for others within the society itself. In other words, the family becomes a microcosm of the greater social macrocosm. Good family creates a good and healthy society. A true family is not only one which is are related, but one which is also connected. Very many times, especially living in the West and LA, my God, I think you people spend half your lives on the highways. Huh? Anywhere you go, it's like, 45 minutes. For us, that is far. But especially living in a place like Los Angeles and other places too, we hardly get a chance to connect with those we are related to. Thank God for WhatsApp, huh? Or Viber. At least that's one way of staying connected. But sometimes even these cell phones have taken over our lives so much that we pay more importance to them than to our family. Haven't you seen in your own families, people are sitting around together, either watching TV or even talking, and everybody's, on the iPhone. So these iPhones have dominated our lives so much. And I'm not against iPhones because I have a couple of them myself. But they have dominated our lives so much. I've seen this myself. You may have seen it too. Somebody is doing the tawaf of the Kaaba. On the tawaf, and he's talking on the iPhone. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Jibreel or somebody? What are we talking to? Even the most precious moments that we have in our lives, the most spiritual moment, what can be more spiritual than actually doing the tawaf of the Kaaba? And yet people are on the iPhone. Even when they're praying the Jamaat, I've seen the phone rings, they don't want to check who called. They can't answer because it makes the namaz batil. But even then they do that. It has become too much, frankly speaking. And therefore, at least there are those, by the way, I know some families who after a certain point in time, 8 o'clock at night, they switch off the router. Huh? So nobody can connect in the family then. That's one way of making sure that people are connected to the family than to the iPhone. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. Without the family then, there is no real family. It's just by name. Many a time says, it's my brother, my sister. But if we're not connected, then we are just related by name. There is a very beautiful hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet says, if you want to increase your age and your sustenance, then keep in close contact with your family members. Keep in close contact. Keep good relations with the next of kin. As I said, the relations demand something. They demand our time. They demand sometimes our finances. But the key component in the Quran, there are other components within this main component. But the key component when it comes to the family, and of course when it comes to society at large, is rahmah. When again and again the Quran is stressing mercy within the family. Where is the source of mercy in the Quran? We have to be merciful to each other, and especially with those who are closely connected to us, because Allah has put mercy within us. As Allah says in the Quran, كَتَبَ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ رَحْمَةً. Allah has written upon Himself rahmah. You cannot separate Allah from rahmah. Similarly, you cannot separate yourself from that attribute of rahmah. As I said in my previous lecture, that hatred only comes when we fail to activate love. Because rahmah and mercy is a key core value. In another very important hadith, the Prophet says, Man la yarham la yurham. Man la yarham la yurham. The one who shows no mercy is not shown any mercy himself. If you cannot be merciful to others, how can you expect mercy from others? And that's why, by the way, one of the greatest sins in Islam, there is a list of the kaba'ir, as it's called, the great sins. One of the greatest sins is to cut or rahm, as it's called, to cut off relations. Silatul rahm is connecting. The key element here is rahm again. Silatul rahm, cut or rahm. What is this rahm here? Rahm here means the womb. In other words, if you cut off relations with your cousin, with your sister, with your brother, you are actually disconnecting yourself from the womb that gave birth to you. Because somewhere along the lines, you and your cousin are connected with a womb. And who carries the womb? It's the mother. So the mother becomes a source of mercy within that family. That mercy that Allah has given, their mother becomes a source of that mercy which spreads towards the members of the family. My sisters and brothers, Islam says very correctly and importantly that correct believing is connected with correct living. If you want to believe correctly, you have to live correctly too. And that living correctly means connected to the family members to start with. Relationships within the family is not only by name, not only by saying salam alaikum from time to time. Most importantly is by doing amr bil ma'roof. In other words, aligning the moral compass. And this is coming from the Quran itself, as I shall prove to you. In other words, we as members within the family have to reset our moral compasses, especially when you find that one of your family members is going astray. You don't need to go and tell anybody else, huh? You need to go and set that moral alignment or the moral compass of your family members. Sadi in his Gulistan says it so correctly. He says that look at the rahmah of Allah. He sees what you do wrong. He can see what you are doing wrong, but he hides it. He hides it from everybody else. But your neighbor, he hears only. He hears what you're doing wrong. He has not even seen it, and everybody else knows about it. Huh? Everybody else knows. That's why the first important thing is whenever there's a family member who is doing wrong, whose moral compass is not properly aligned, shall we say, then you need to reset that compass. This moral alignment is seen in the Quran as one of these verses that really is striking for me. There are many, of course, but one of those that I just love to recite is actually in the context of Nabi Sulaiman. You remember the story of Nabi Sulaiman? He's walking and he sees the ants and he can hear them. He has the ability to listen and understand the languages. And the head of the ants is telling the other ants that you go and hide in your holes now because Sulaiman and his army is coming and they will trample over you. فَتَبَسَّمَ Sulaiman, the Quran says. Sulaiman smiled. And at that time he recites this dua. رَبِّي أَوْزِعْنِي أَنْ أَشْكُرَ نِعْمَتَكَ الَّتِي أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيَّ وَعَلَى وَالِدَيَّ وَأَنَا أَعْمَلُ صَالِحًا تَرْضَاهُ. Oh my Lord, inspire me. Inspire me that I should do good deeds, that you will be pleased with me. And then he continues, وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِّيَّتِي. Oh my Lord, reform me through my children. In other words, it's not only the parents who reform the children, many a time it is the children who change their parents. How many a time you find that the father or the mother is not properly aligned, but he or she becomes ashamed because of the proper and correct behavior of the children. وَأَصْلِحْ لِي فِي ذُرِّيَّتِي. Reform me through my children. Not only that, the Quran goes further when it comes to this moral alignment, as we call it, within the family. Normally we tend to think that it's the husband who always has to tell the wife off. Huh? But when it comes to morality, when it comes to piety, it is gender neutral. The Quran states again, Al-mu'minuna wal-mu'minati, the believing men and the believing women, ba'dhum awliya'u ba'd. They are guardians to each other. Awliya also means they protect each other. They look after, custodians of each other. So it's not only the man who has to look after the woman in the moral sense. Even the woman has to make sure that her husband is properly morally aligned. And the Quran continues after that. This is in Surah number 9, verse 61. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. This amr bil ma'roof and nahy lil munkar, we tend to interpret it very narrowly as to do this and don't do that. No, my friends. The whole purpose of amr bil ma'roof is to correct someone's moral alignment. It prevents what we call moral suicide. There are different kinds of suicide, not just physical. Moral suicide too. Why the Quran emphasizes again and again amr bil ma'roof wa yanhauna lil munkar? Because when somebody is deviating, you try and bring them back towards the right path. But before you bring them back, before you align their compasses, you make sure that your own compasses are aligned. Because I can't tell you to pray unless I pray, and so on. So even the believing men and the believing women are custodians and guardians for each other. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. And when there comes a time, again from the Quran, whereby the husband is told again and again, and he refuses to listen. He is oppressing. He is doing what is morally wrong. He is cheating. And the wife knows it, and she keeps telling him, and he does wrong. The Quran gives us another core value of how to stand up to oppression, even if it means that you go against your own husband. The story is told here of Asiya, although she's not mentioned by name, the wife of Fir'aun. She says, according to the Quran, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. Allah gives the parable, the example for those who believe. امرأة فرعون, the wife of Fir'aun, إذ قالت ربي ابلي لي عندك بيتا في الجنة. Oh my Lord, build a house for me in heaven. The wife of Fir'aun is asking Allah that build a house for me in heaven. وَنَجِّنِي مِنْ فِرْعَوْنَ وَعَمَلِهِ. And oh my Lord, spare me, distance me from Fir'aun and his action. This is the wife praying to her Lord, having tried everything to morally align Fir'aun. She is brought up, she is living with an oppressor, but she does not submit to the oppressor. She submits to her Lord. And she says, oh my Lord, save me from this man. Najjini min amalihi, and save me from his actions. Wa najjini min al-qawm al-zalimin, and save me from those who are oppressing. This question of morality and family relations is deeply ingrained in the Quran. And you'll notice that almost everything I've said so far is coming from the Quran itself. Here is a lesson of how to parent. When you're talking with your son, I wonder how many a time we sit with our sons or with our daughters and talk like that. In the Quran itself, within the family structure, the Quran gives the example of Luqman in Surah number 31. It's called a Surah Luqman. Luqman makes his son sit down. Ya bunayya, oh my son, la tuqaddi darbaka fi nas. Do not turn your way insolently, your cheeks away from the people. Inna Allah la yuhibbul mukhtal al-fakhur. Kull mukhtal al-fakhur. Because Allah does not love anybody who is arrogant, or who is insolent, who is vain, who is proud. وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرْحًا. The Quran continues. And do not even walk with arrogance on the ground. You know, some people are so arrogant, they walk with arrogance. They thump the ground. You wonder what the ground has done wrong to them. But that arrogance comes even in the way of walking. And Luqman says to his son, don't turn your cheek in arrogance. You know, there are some people you talk to them, they just turn their faces away. Don't do that. And don't even walk arrogantly on the ground. When it comes to a husband and a wife, again the Quran identifies another core value within that overall scheme of rahmah. A verse that you've heard so many a time. وَمِنْ آيَاتِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. Amongst the signs of the Lord is that He has created a spouse for you amongst you. He has created a spouse. But not only has He created a spouse for you, He has put something within you which will bring you two together. Here, two very different individuals, sometimes brought up in different cultures, sometimes different faith, different ethnicity, but something within them that Allah has put which draws them closer. That's why it is called the ayatullah, wa min ayatihi, amongst the signs of God. And khalaqa lakum min anfusikum azwaja. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَالرَّحْمَةً. And He has put mawaddah and rahmah. That inner rahmah cannot remain within yourself, the Quran is saying. With your spouse, that inner rahmah must manifest itself with outside mawaddah, affectionate. In other words, show your affection to your spouse. When was the last time you told your spouse, I love you, huh? It's very difficult for men to tell somebody who is married to for 30 years to tell Bibi that I love you. We seem to take it for granted. Whereas the Quran says the opposite. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَالرَّحْمَةً. Allah has put mawaddah, which is an outer expression of affection, and rahmah within you. And that within you should come outside you. There's a very beautiful hadith from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Where the Imam says, إِذَا أَحْبَبْتَ رَجُلًا فَأَخْبِرْهُ. When you love somebody, then tell them, express your love. Don't keep it to yourself. Because that creates a healthy society. Instead of being critical of each other, as we human beings tend to be, how about expressing our love and affection for each other? Again, the Quran is very concerned with those core values. لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. In the marriage it says that you should have sukoon with her. What is sukoon? Is peace and tranquility. In other words, the couple should live peacefully, with tranquility. And therefore the Quran continues again. See the core values that the Quran emphasizes within the family. This is all within the family. Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna. They are a clothing, libas for you, and you are a clothing for them. What do clothes do for us? They give us protection. They give us security. They give us comfort. This is what the husband and the wife are supposed to do for each other and with each other. Not only, this is now coming from Rumi, not from the Quran. Not only he said that God created things in pairs, but he planted love in each other so that we share it with the other. And he continues, Rumi continues, when a gardener plants a tree, there must be a reason why he plants a tree, huh? He doesn't just do it for the sake of it, because he's hoping for some fruits from the tree. In other words, Allah put love within you so that you can express and grow in that love, not just for the sake of keeping it within yourself. So express that love, grow in that love that Allah has put within you. When it comes to dealing with seniors, it's amazing how the Quran delineates different values with different parts of the family, different groups of the family. The rahmah is still there, but there's something that is important, especially for the seniors, which is what? Izzah, dignity. Dignity is very important, because many a time the seniors become vulnerable. Sometimes we feel that they are a burden to us. And therefore there is a very important dua that the Quran has cited, which we recite many a time. Rabbir hamhuma kama rabbayani saghira. You've heard that many a time. It's not only a dua, by the way. Oh Lord, have mercy on them the way that they had mercy on me when I was young. You know what it's telling us? That this is not only a dua, but a reminder for you and me, that they were so merciful to me, now I should be merciful to them the way that they were merciful to me when I was young. Therefore, Imam as-Sadiq says, he says, be careful how you deal with your parents. He's talking to us now, that is, we who are in the middle age, how we deal with our seniors. Why? He says, because your children are looking at you. You mistreat your parents today, they will mistreat you tomorrow. And then don't say, why are you mistreating me? They'll tell you, Daddy, we saw how you treated your father, your mother, and so on. So seniors become very important. And therefore, إِمَّا يَبْلُغَنَّ كِبَرْ أَحْدُمَا أَوْ كِلَاهُمَا. If one of them or both of them, the Quran identifies seniority here. Kibar. Kibar is when they attain kabir bis-sin, as it's called. Seniority. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ. You've heard this many a time. Don't say uff to them. Uff is the lowest form of disrespect. The lowest form of disrespect. It's just like many a time, we say abana. That abana, don't even say to them, because they feel neglected, the Quran says. فَلَا تَقُلْ لَهُمَا أُفٍّ وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا. And do not deride or mock them. Because many a time, what we call in Gujarati, excuse me if you don't speak Gujarati, chara pareshe, you know, that we mimic them. I think that's the right translation. We make fun of them. The Quran says, don't do that. وَلَا تَنْهَرْهُمَا وَقُلْ لَهُمَا قَوْلًا كَرِيمًا. Karamat, again, dignity. That talk to them in a dignified manner. Show them that respect and the love that they are looking for. They don't want money. They don't want anything else. Once you become old, the only thing that you need is that love and source of dignity. And then the Quran says, وَاخْفِضْ لَهُمَا جَنَاحَ الظُّلِّ مِنَ الرَّحْمَةِ. And lower the wings of humility in front of them. In other words, talk to them in a very humble manner. See the way that the Quran describes this special form of relationship with the seniors of the community. And then the dua comes, رَبِّ ارْحَمْهُمَا كَمَا رَبَّيَانِي صَغِيرًا. But in this culture, I don't know whether you'll agree with me, but in this culture, the older you get, the more lonely you become also, huh? They dump you in the nursing home, in the seniors home. Hey, how come they never dumped us in the babysitter's home all the time, huh? When we were young? This idea, by the way, of a nursing home for seniors is a relatively new concept, because in our culture, if you recall, we were always told that you better look after your parents the way that they looked after you, huh? You have to suffer, that's fine, because they suffered for you too. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. We live also in an atmosphere which is sometimes spiritually challenged. And I'm not dissing or knocking this particular environment, but it's a reality that we need to nourish our spiritual batteries, if you like, rejuvenate them. And one way of doing this is to do things together. And again, look at the Quran. When we do things, it says, you do it with your son or with your daughter. By the way, in the Arab culture, you may have noticed that the father is known through the son. The son is known through the father, because it is almost assumed that they have a very close relationship. Same with mother and daughter. So a man is called Abu so-and-so, Abul Hassan, Abu whatever, because the father of Hassan, the father of Zayd. And the son is called Ibn al-Hassan, the son of Hassan, Ibn Rasulullah, the son of the Prophet of God, and so on. Because it is assumed there is a very close connection. Similarly, the mother is called Hamida, and the daughter is called Bint Zainab, and so on. Because of this close relationship. So when Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he wants to pray, see the dua that he recites, and it's in the Quran. Rabbi, oh my Lord, make me amongst those who pray. Rabbi ij'alni muqima salat wa min dhurriyyati, and my offspring too. That not only should I be praying, but my offspring should pray too. But my children will only pray if they see me pray. Because if I don't pray, and I don't pray in front of them, and if I don't teach them how to pray, they will not pray. Even when it comes to building the Kaaba, the temple, the Kaaba itself in Mecca, was built by Ibrahim alayhi salam according to the Quran. But he wasn't the only one who built it. He built it with Ismail together. In other words, you do things with your children, with your offspring, so they become a part of the family and they bond with you too. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a very beautiful anecdote that I want to recite in front of you. Again, to show this close connection between the parents and the children. In the olden days, if somebody asked you, if your son asked you, your daughter asked you, Daddy, Mommy, why do you pray? It says, because we want Jannah, or because it's sawab, or because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asked us to do that. But, you know, this younger generation, they're looking for a different kind of response, something that they can connect with, something which they can resonate with. And here is a professor of mathematics who is a convert, by the way. Jeffrey Lang is his name. He has a daughter called Jamila. I've met him personally. He was here in California before. Now I believe he's in Kansas, last time I knew. And he writes in his book, Even Angels Ask, I believe this is the name of the book. He wrote 2 books. One, the first book is called Struggling to Surrender. It's a very enticing title. Right? Struggling to Surrender. You struggle to surrender. And the second one is Even Angels Ask. What he's trying to say that if we don't ask, even the angels ask Allah. How come you're creating somebody who's going to create fasad? If angels can ask, why can't we? We shouldn't just take anything for granted. And in this book then, his daughter called Jamila is asking him, Daddy, why do you pray? And what he says is this, Oh Jamila, God is the source of love, mercy and kindness. He's like the sun. He's the source of all light. The love that I feel for you and the love that Mommy feels for you actually comes from God himself, because God has put that love within us. And then he continues, Oh Jamila, when I pray, I feel that love of God and the mercy of God in a very special way. We all know we have the love of God, but when I pray, I feel that love in a very special way. Just as sometimes you feel closer to us when we take care of you. But when we hug you and we kiss you, you feel that love in a very, very close way. Oh Jamila, we know that God loves us. We know that He's kind to us. But when we pray, we feel that love of God. We feel that mercy of God in a very special way. And when we feel that love of God, we are touched by God Himself. God touches us through the prayers. Then God touching us spiritually, of course, is so beautiful and so powerful that we love to share that love with others around us. And the first person that we share that love with are our children. And then Jeffrey Lang continues, I'm grateful for what God has given me because of that love. I'm aware of how proud I am to be your father because of that love. I may not be the perfect father, O Jamila, but I'm a better father because of that prayer that I offer to Allah. I may not be the perfect father, but because of that prayer and the love of God that I experience, I'm a better father to you. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala. The time is running short as usual. Time is always running against us. But just one or two before I finish. When it comes to the parents also, again the Quran delineates this relationship, not only between the parents and the children, but also between the children and the parents. One of the most beautiful verses amongst the many others in the Quran itself, وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ. Your Lord has decreed that you will worship only Him. You'll only worship Him, but the Quran doesn't stop there. The verse doesn't stop there. It continues. وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنَ إِحْسَانًا. And you will do ihsan to your parents. What is this ihsan? In your language, my language, Urdu, ihsan means to do a favor. Mfanyie ihsani bwana, what do you say? But in Arabic, it doesn't mean that at all. You cannot do ihsan, a favor to your parents, after all that they have done to you. Ihsan means to do a beautiful deed that is due to that person who you are doing a beautiful deed to. In other words, you are repaying a debt which is on you. And therefore, the Quran says that you will do ihsan to your parents. And between the parents, the Quran mentions more specifically the mother. Because we, the man that is, we hardly ever experience the pains that a woman experiences. We don't carry a child. We don't go through the pains of childbirth. But the Quran reminds us and wants us to remember, and especially the children, remember the favors that your mother did on you. حَمَلَتْهُ أُمُّهُ كُرْهًا وَوَضَعَتْهُ كُرْهًا. The mother carried the child with great difficulties and gave birth with great difficulty. Kurhan is something almost like very heavy, almost not wanting to do it, but she did it. Kurhan, she carried the child with kurh and gave birth with kurh, that is with great difficulties. وَحَمْلُهُ وَفِصَالُهُ ثَلَاثُونَ شَهْرًا. And the total period between carrying the child and weaning the child, suckling the child, is 30 months. 2.5 years, 2.5 years. In other words, the Quran describes and tells us the full period, the difficulties that the mother goes through. Because of that, as we said, you can never repay the favors that she did to you. As there's a very important and beautiful anecdote of a person by the name of Uwais al-Qarani. Uwais was a Sahabi, companion of the Prophet. But he was a different kind of the Prophet companion because he never met the Prophet. He used to live in Yemen. Yet he is counted as a Sahabi because he heard about the Prophet. He yearned to visit the Prophet. But his mother was not a convert. So she would not let him go. Uwais, his mother, would not let him go. She says, no, I want you to stay here. I'm alone. And Uwais was told that visiting the Prophet is a sunnah, but obedience to your mother is a wajibat. Being with your mother in her present state is wajib upon you. Visiting the Prophet is meritorious, no doubt. It's a great thawab, but more important for you is to be here with your mother. And therefore he never met the Prophet, yet the Prophet said, Uwais is my Sahabi. And that goes again to show the importance of the mother. I want to end this segment now with the story of Isa alayhi salam, because that also is instructive to us, that we should do bar, or bir also called, to our parents, acts of goodness. You'll recall the story of Isa. He's born, and the mother brings the child in front of the people. And there's a very interesting anecdote here, by the way. When Maryam brings the child in front of the people, she cannot speak. And the people are surprised, obviously. ما كان أبوك امرئ سوء وما كانت أمك بغية. Immediately they associate Maryam with her parents. Look at this close relationship between the daughter and the parents. Your father was not an evil man, they're saying to Maryam. Neither was your mother unchaste. ما كان أبوك امرئ سوء. Your father was not evil. He was a very upright man. Your mother was not insolent. She was not of a loose character. She was a very chaste woman. Where did this child come from? So they associate Maryam with her parents. Of course, Maryam couldn't speak. فَأَشَّارَتْ إِلَيْهِ. She pointed to the child that he will give a response on my behalf. And it was important for Isa to give a response, because if Maryam said this is miraculous, nobody would have believed her. By speaking, Isa was saving the chastity of his mother. Because if she spoke, nobody would have believed her. قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. He said, I am the servant of God. And notice by saying إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ, right from birth, Isa is destroying the doctrine of Trinity. I am not God, I am not the son of God, أنا عبد الله. إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. I am the servant of God. He has given me the book and made me a prophet right from childbirth, not at the age of 40. وجعلني نبيا. And then he continues, a long verse, وأوصاني بالصلاة والزكاة ما دمت حيا. My Lord has asked me to pray and give the zakat for as long as I'm alive. And then he continues, وبرا بوالدتي. Then I should do bar to my mother. He could not say my parents because he don't have a father. What is this bar? Bar is that act of kindness which is due to your parents. The Prophet says the bar does not end when your parents die, it ends when you die. Because for as long as you are alive, even if your parents are dead, you will continuously do good deeds for your parents. Even giving sadaqah, even planting a tree, that is also bar in their name. You build a madrasa, you build a mosque, you give to the poor, anything good that you do towards your fellow human being in the name of your parents, that is also bar. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We've been talking about Karbala and family values, and I don't think that there is a better anecdote of family values than Karbala itself. It's a lesson for us. Amongst the many lessons that we can learn from Karbala, it is how to be close together as a parent. I was telling you earlier about moral alignment, how the wife can influence the husband in opposite way. And here is an anecdote whereby Zuhair bin Qayn, Zuhair is an Uthmani. He's not on the path of Ali. He's on the path of Uthman. And yet he knows that he is on the same path. They're traveling the same road as Imam Hussein is. And he does not stop where Imam Hussein stops. It's either a bit forward or a bit behind. But they just happen to be on the same path. One day as he's having lunch, a messenger of Imam Hussein comes to Zuhair. Zuhair, the grandson of the Prophet, is calling you. Zuhair is bewildered. He doesn't know what to do. Look at this. The wife of Zuhair. She says, Zuhair, why are you sitting there? Hussein is calling you and you're just sitting eating your lunch? Go and answer him. Immediately his conscience is awakened, and it takes the wife to remind him. Zuhair goes to meet Imam Hussein. And interestingly, history doesn't tell us what happens. But what it does tell us, as soon as Zuhair comes back, he says to his family and his close confidants and friends that I'm joining Hussein. I'm joining Hussein. It's on the day of Ashur that we know what happened. Because when Zuhair comes to talk to the enemy, he's talking to them. And the enemy is surprised. Zuhair, you are an Uthmani. You are on the path of Uthman, not Alawi. You're not supposed to be on his side. You're supposed to be against Hussein. And Zuhair says, I'm not like you. I never invited him. I never wrote to him. قَدْ جَمَا طَرِيقُ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَا. It just so happened that the tariq, the path joined us. We happened to be traveling along the same way. وَلَمَّا رَأَيْتُهُ ذَكَرْتُ بِهِ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. When I saw Hussein, I remembered the Prophet. And I knew that if I fought against Hussein, I'd be fighting against the Prophet. Hi Azadarana Hussein. Karbala is full of lessons. A lesson from someone like Nafi. Nafi is bin Hilal, is a person who was a lover of Ahlul Bayt. When he heard that Hussein is coming, he was in Kufa. He left Kufa and joined Imam Hussein. When Hur realized that this time Hur was still an enemy, when he realized that Nafi is joining Hussein, he stopped Nafi. He came in between. Imam Hussein immediately objected. Hur, he's my follower. How can you stop him? He says, well, we don't want him to stop you. Imam Hussein says, Hur, when people come and join you, I don't stop them. So many soldiers are coming to join you. I never say anything. How can you stop him from joining me? Hur allows him. On the day of Ashur, this Nafi' comes with Hazrat Abbas, took in Karbala. They come and go to the water, the river itself. They fill up the water skins, and Hajjam comes up to Nafi and says, you can drink the water, but you cannot take any water. This is the loyalty and the bravery of Nafi. You can drink water, but you cannot take it back. Nafi says, if I can't take it back, I'm not going to drink it either. The children of Hussein, the grandchildren of the Prophet are crying and dying of thirst. You want me to drink the water and not them? This is Nafi. When he comes to the battlefield, Nafi again is one of those Hafiz al-Quran. There were many of them in the army of Imam Hussein. Nafi kills no less than 12 people on his own. Finally, the only way that they can defeat Nafi is to break his arms. His arms are broken. His arms are not cut, but he cannot even move them anymore. Blood is spilling from all over his face. He comes in front of Umar ibn Sa'ad. Umar ibn Sa'ad says, what did you do, Nafi? Nafi says, I did a lot of good. I killed your men. I wounded so many of them because they are fighting against the grandson of the Prophet. Umar ibn Sa'ad says, what do you want me to do with you? Nafi says, you can do what you like. But if you were a true Muslim, you would not be fighting against us. At that time, Umar ibn Sa'ad turns to Shimr, says, you can have him. Do whatever you like with him. And you know what Shimr does? He takes a spear and puts it right in the heart of Nafi. This is how they treat people who cannot even move their arms. Azadarana Hussein, the eve of Ashur is an amazing eve, whereby the mothers are looking at their sons, the brothers are looking at each other. The fathers are looking at the children, knowing fully well that this is going to be the last night on earth. Can you imagine the scene in Karbala? On the eve of Ashur, Hussein is walking around the tents to look at them. She looks at Layla, is looking at her young son, Ali Akbar, who will no longer be there tomorrow. Kulthum is with Abbas. Abbas says to Kulthum, you do not have an offspring, but I will be your sacrifice tomorrow. And then Hussein comes to the tent of Zainab. Zainab is talking to her two sons, On and Muhammad. And she says, oh Muhammad, you make sure that you are sacrificed tomorrow for my brother. I do not want you to remain alive. Can you imagine what Zainab is going through? But that's the valor, the bravery that she exhibits on the day of Ashur. The two brothers, On and Muhammad, come in front of Hussein, says, Ya Amma, oh our uncle, it is our time to go and give our lives for you. These are two young kids. They're in their teens. Hussein says, have you taken permission from your mother? The brothers say, she is the one who commanded us to come here. She is the one who commanded us to come here and give our lives for you. Hussein puts On and Muhammad on their horses. As they go to the battlefield, Zainab is on the musalla looking at her children. Hussein is walking behind them. Khuda Hafiz ya own. Ya Muhammad, the two children are going and fighting with each other. They're helping each other to scatter the enemy. A time comes when On falls down. Soon after that, Muhammad falls down. Hussein and Abbas go rushing to the corpses of On and Muhammad. They bring back the little bodies of On and Muhammad. When Zainab sees the bodies of On and Muhammad, you know what she does? She goes on the musalla. Oh my Lord, accept these sacrifices from me. Zainab did not cry for her children. She had to be there for her family members. She had to be strong for the other members of the family, for the other children. But our riwayat say that when Zainab went back to Medina, as she was nearing her home, she saw somebody who was walking on the opposite side. He said, "Oh Bibi, what are you doing here? This is not your house." Zainab looks up to the man and she says, "Oh Abdullah, you have not recognized your own wife. I am Zainab bint Ali." When Zainab, can you imagine the scene? That when a mother goes to her home and finds the rooms of her children empty, when she enters the house, she says, "No honor Muhammad anymore." Matam Hussein.